Saying that the original story was lost in translation would be an understatement to describe the characters of this movie. While every adaptation of Peter Pan adds or changes parts of the story to fit a vision or medium, Peter and Wendy simply strips away layers from the characters for no reason. Well, no reason in terms of writing. This reimagined version lacks all the essence that made the story work for over a century, replacing it with superficial characters moving around for 2 hours. Now, I don't care how faithful Peter Pan and Wendy is to the book or to the 1953 movie. There's been about 2.6 billion adaptations of Peter Pan and its universe across all media with completely different takes, and this movie is just one more. Therefore, it wouldn't really be fair to criticize this adaptation based on its faithfulness to the source material when I could do the same with every other movie. What I would like to criticize is the characters of this movie, who are utter garbage. First, a word on the setting, as one could argue that the world should be its own character in a fantasy movie. London looks awful. There's a storm and it's raining. Fortunately, the sky clears up and now we get to see a depressing view of London from the 1950s. Thank God they stole the 1953 music, or the scene would have been very boring to listen to. Yes, I said listen to because for the first 18 minutes of the movie you can't see anything. And then we arrive in Neverland. Neverland is a rock. Wow, it looks like every shoreline I've ever seen. Guys, I think I'm in Neverland. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but why is it so empty? Are we in a fantasy land or not? Oh wait, never mind. Look, there's a rainbow. It has to be Neverland. It's almost like they ran out of money. Can you guess what this is? It's Skull Rock. Can't you see the skull here? Isn't it impressive, spooky and magical? It looks like nothing. The home of the Lost Boys looks like a house 50 years after a nuclear war. There's one boring shot of the Indian camp where they're sitting doing nothing to make sure there's nothing controversial about it. The pirates are just dumb pirates. They're fine with wasting their lives on chasing Peter. The ship looks boring, dark and empty. Anyway, let's talk about the characters now, from the most useless to the most annoying. First, there's the mermaids. And that's all we see of the mermaids. Not very enchanting, but alright, let's keep going. There's Nana, the nursemaid.
Nana, the nursemaid, being a dog, kept her opinions to herself and viewed the whole affair with a certain tolerance.
Nana is now a dog?
Nana.
But Father, can't you just stay for a little while?
No, she cannot.
Okay. It has 10 seconds of screen time and doesn't do anything. It's a bit underwhelming, but who cares about a nurse dog when there's a badass crocodile?
Oh, God.
The crocodile is a generic beast you can find in any swamp in real life. There's nothing clever about TikTok the crocodile as a metaphor because it wants to eat people regardless of who they are, and the ticking doesn't mean anything, as a creative choice because the ticking is heard for 12 seconds before a stupid music choice takes over, and as a story because it's just a generic beast that shows up only once in the whole movie for an action scene.
But now when he's about, he warns you, as you might say, with his tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock.
In other words, the whole dynamic between the crocodile and Hook, as well as the meaning behind it, is not readapted or changed, but completely removed. It's almost like there's a pattern here. Between Neverland and its people, the mermaids, the dog and the crocodile, it's clear the writers went for a more realistic and grounded story. Why? You've just sucked all the joy out of the story by taking away key elements of the characters and the world that made them so interesting. Without the crocodiles, me cannot be like the 1953 version because Hook isn't bullied all the time. Without the tension in the crew who is tired of chasing Peter, Smith's dedication to his captain doesn't stand out. That's fine, but what interesting ideas did they come up with instead to make this character compelling? Nothing. There's a beginning of an idea with Smee being the adoptive father of Hook, but we're just told about this and at no point in the movie does it look like Smee could be some kind of father figure to Hook. Speaking of fathers who don't exist, let's talk about Wendy's dad. He's completely useless. There's no parallel with Hook, he doesn't learn anything, he doesn't seem good or bad, he's there for 1 minute and says about 20 words. He could have been removed from the entire story and nothing would have changed. The mother is used as an exposition dump for the movie's morals. She's here to explain the point of the story so the writers can pretend that their movie is smart and meaningful. She's also the one telling stories to the children, not Wendy, which is an odd choice because she doesn't seem to find Wendy's lack of maturity endearing. Why would her mother fill her head with nonsensical stories if she's so grounded in reality? Wendy's brothers are just tagging along on the journey. They have very little screen time or impact on the story. At some point in the movie they become as irrelevant as any of the Lost Boys. With how many characters they removed, one could have assumed that the writers were going to give them actual things to do, but no, there's the beginning of an idea.
Don't hurt him! Father, it wasn't my fault. It was their silly little game.
No.
And they started it. It wasn't me.
Why did you say it was our fault?
You're a pirate, aren't you? It's every man for himself.
But nothing comes of it. She just says her punchline and they never fight again. They're just Brother 1 and Brother 2, only here to replace Tiger Lily as a damsel in distress. The Lost Boys don't add any value to the story, pretty much like Wendy's brothers. It's fascinating how every character mentioned so far has been stripped of any purpose. Why are they even in the story? I know it's hard to believe that such a long movie can be so empty, but the amount of time spent on nothing is quite impressive. The writers gave lines to every kid to avoid leaving any of them out. Unfortunately, it was a stupid decision. With 8 children, it's impossible to care about any of them because they only have 2 lines each. Alright guys, the kid has 2 lines, so I want to see headlines about how major his role is. He's the captain of the Lost Boys. Wow, how could I miss that? If I ignore Peter being in charge, Wendy being in charge, Tiger Lily being in charge, and the fact that he got 2 lines, then yeah, he got a major role. It's almost like we didn't learn anything about the Lost Boys during the movie. Listen to this brilliant dialogue.
Lost Boys.
Every last one of us.
But you're not all boys. So?
But I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I guess writing doesn't really matter. Perhaps I'm writing a garbage story by stripping all the substance out of it to have bland characters. Again, they are allowed to change the story, but why haven't they come up with a new reason for these boys and girls to be lost? They just removed the original idea and replaced it with nothing. Peter brought them to Neverland because they didn't want to grow up, but unlike the original story, it needs to be expanded upon to be anything other than lazy and lame. It's also very disturbing to think that Peter kidnapped them. It's more nuanced in the text, which implies that they might have been abandoned. If Peter took them to Neverland because they didn't want to grow up, it's fair to assume that the writers went with the 1953 version in which the Lost Boys don't age. They might have been there for decades, which means they wouldn't have a mother to return to. And because they were not unclaimed babies who fell off their prams, I'm not sure if the police, the orphanage, or even the children would let the darlings adopt them. So we're left with these children who came back explicitly in the movie to see their actual mothers, but they might be dead. And it's okay, the movie ends, so we don't have to think about it. There's nothing in this movie that suggests the Lost Boys are having fun or enjoying their lives in Neverland. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It feels like Peter is holding them hostage, preventing them from thinking about their parents.
Some things do change.
You're not supposed to talk about that. What? What aren't we supposed to talk about? She misses you. And she loves you very much.
I wouldn't mind seeing my mother again.
Yes, you would.
It's never good when Peter starts slamming doors.
That's why you must never leave. Who knows what you'll become if you go?
They're not living a carefree life filled with fun and adventures. I really can't see why anyone would want to live in this boring and dangerous place called Neverland. Tiger Lily is basically the big sister of the gang, so I'm not sure why they even need a Wendy. She takes care of Peter like a Wendy would. For once, the writers added something to the story, but she's just your typical modern Disney female character, so I wouldn't exactly call this an improvement. She's very forgettable and the writers didn't give her a personality. The only thing we know about her is that she loves speaking Cree every other sentence for no reason.
Wendy Chikia,
Pardon?
are you the Wendy?
Are you Tiger Lily?
Mr. Wimienche.
I'm talking to an English-speaking audience, why would I randomly start switching languages in the middle? This is so dumb.
But I beg your pardon, my lord, but in my opinion, I am sure, mais alors I am tout à fait sure, que c'est un coup de fantomas.
She knows she doesn't understand what she's saying, stop it. The Lost Boys must have spent decades in Neverland to be able to understand her unless they're just pretending to. Or maybe they understand her because they're listening to her the right way, like with Tinkerbell.
Can't she speak?
Of course she can. You just haven't learned to hear her right.
There's nothing much to say about Tinkerbell, so I'll go on a small rant instead. The female characters in this movie are garbage. They're not all in love with Peter, which is again more realistic and modern. The three main female characters are now working together as if they were friends.
You have a magical fairy that makes you fly, and a gaggle of children that do your bidding, with a princess that cleans up your messes while you're off gallivanting with pirates. Do you really think that you could beat Captain Hook on your own?
And what happens if it doesn't?
Yes, what happens then?
All of this would have been fine if only there was any nuance or depth to it. The three main female characters are just one-dimensional. They're good people and nice to each other like they're in some kind of cute side story, meanwhile the actual plot and character development all revolves around Peter and Hook. The rivalry between the girls used to fuel the story, and even though most of it was centered around Peter, they made their own choices. However, now they merely react to the dangerous situations Peter puts them in and try to fix them. Not only are they still dependent on Peter's actions, they don't make choices anymore. It's simply hilarious.
Well, that was fun.
The writers can have Wendy slap Peter as much as they want, their female characters are a disaster. Guys, your female characters went from chasing after Peter because they loved him to chasing after Peter because they hate him. So much for agency. Why is she the only fairy in the world? Why isn't she glowing? Her life seems miserable. Let's all say we don't believe in fairies. Hopefully she'll drop dead and she won't have to live like this anymore. The funniest scene in the movie involves Tinkerbell. Well, her magic, not her as an individual, because the movie doesn't care about her.
You have the boy's magic.
No, this magic belongs to no boy.
What? What does it mean? We know girls can fly too, you've been doing it the whole movie. Are you trying to say it belongs to fairies? We know that. Tink is the one who made you fly. Also, you're the one taking advantage of Tinkerbell's powers now, so what is your point here, Wendy?
How did you survive? Faith, trust, and pixie dust.
No pixie dust this time. No magic. No tricks. Just a little help from my friends.
Wow, so pixie dust wasn't help from his friend Tinkerbell. Are you telling me they're not friends and Peter just stole the dust? Peter never once claimed he had the ability to fly on his own. What is happening here? And none of this matters anyway because Tinkerbell never says anything. Why is she even here at all? Remove her from the story, write it so that the ability to fly comes from within, and now your punchline about magic belonging to no boy and your line about pixie dust are still lame, but at least they mean something.
You miss your home?
My mother. But she's long gone now. I'm just a story.
I don't understand how Peter can fly when he seems so depressed. Not only is he unhappy, but he's also portrayed as a moron, as well as a narcissist, bully, and kidnapper. All of this is perfectly fine, except he doesn't have any redeeming qualities that make the original character so compelling. The character doesn't represent a sense of wonder and adventure, and the danger he puts the kids in doesn't seem worthwhile. Instead of being a compelling and funny asshole, he's an unappealing and extremely unlikable asshole. I don't see why anyone would want to follow him. The movie has a happy ending and the writers pretend like Peter learned his lesson, but it's not enough. If you choose to portray Peter as someone who understands what is wrong with him, you need to do a far better job of redeeming him. The reason why the character works in the book is because there is enough room to let the reader decide whether Peter is good or bad, or if it doesn't actually matter because he's literally and figuratively more than just a boy.
You find me a child who truly knows the difference between right and wrong. And I'll show you a man who can't remember why it mattered in the first place.
Yes, you're so close to writing a good story, but you threw this line in and did nothing in the movie to support this idea. In this version, Peter is aware that he ruined Hook's life, stole the Lost Boys from their mothers, and that he's a selfish asshole, which removes all the complexity of the character, and the writers are not even able to make him face the consequences for his actions. In the end, he learns that he needs the help of his friends to defeat the bad guy instead of being so full of pride and selfish. He learns that he's a bad person and asks Hook for forgiveness. I'm not sure when he learned that or why is it even his arc, because he chose to stay in Neverland, which goes against the idea of giving him character growth. He shouldn't really be able to learn from his mistakes because, like Hook said, a real boy would have to grow. But no, everybody smiles at the end, everyone's very happy, and I'm left wondering where half of the movie went. There's this tragic line.
Just think happy thoughts.
Peter, I haven't got any.
Yes, that's because Peter destroyed his life. But it's fine, he's okay, and he smiles at the end. Captain Hook was a friend of Peter who was banished from Neverland because he missed his mom and got lost at sea trying to get back to her. He got saved by Smee and became captain. Like I said with Wakanda Forever, I'm so tired of the bad guys not being bad. Stop it. You can't write it, so stop trying to add depth to the bad guys. Just make the villains evil. I don't want to sympathize with Disney's villains, and you don't have the skill to make me anyway. There isn't much to say about Hook. They added something new to the character by making him a sympathetic villain, but it's poorly executed and they sucked all the life out of the character as a result. He's not funny, charismatic, crazy, or clever. There's nothing interesting about his looks. You could put him in any pirate movie and he would fit right in. The tragic backstory the writers gave him does not at all compensate for what they took away from the character. Wendy is condescending, annoying, know-it-all, slightly aggressive and rude. She enjoys her time in Neverland for the first 5 minutes, but then spends the rest of the movie complaining, which makes sense in the context of the story, but it's very annoying to watch. She's in many ways the opposite of Peter, which could have been interesting if only he wasn't crying every 5 seconds. She's basically bullying him and the movie is fine with it because she has a moral high ground. So he stands there and does nothing about it. If she were less disrespectful towards him, she could have taken on a maternal role because I don't think Disney's message is to tell mothers to slap their son in the face. She doesn't tell bedtime stories, her mom does, which defeats the purpose of bringing a Wendy to Neverland. Her character development is stunted by the fact that she's already too old and mature to fully engage with the fantasy of Neverland, making me wonder why she didn't want to grow up in the first place. During the plank scene, as she jumps, she remembers the good times she had as a child, like in the beginning of the movie, but this time she also imagines what her future could be as an adult. In addition to this, she repeats her mother's words at the end.
Think of what the world is missing out on, with you not being there to do them.
And all the things the world would miss if you weren't there to do them.
It just shows that her mother was the one who made her grow up, not her adventure in Neverland. This is emphasized by her statement that Neverland is too real, meaning staying in Neverland was never an option for her because it was less fun than real life and she might as well go back to the real world. She didn't have any choice but to grow up, which again is what her mom said.
Can't stop time, Wendy.
The whole message about growing up doesn't really work, but the execution of it is also very bad. The stick is supposed to be a magical spyglass and it doesn't work on her at first because she's too old to see like a child.
Well, I don't see anything. She's too grown up, isn't she?
You're just looking the wrong way.
Oh, I see it! There's John!
Now what's really confusing here is that the pirates are very close to shore but we don't see them, so are we supposed to believe that she can't see them as well? This doesn't make sense, of course, because it looks like she can see them when she's attacked, and if pirates represent adulthood and lack of imagination, she should definitely be able to see them. It's not like the pirates are magical creatures. The truth is, I think the pirates are not invisible to her and they just didn't have the budget to insert a ship in the distance. In any case, she couldn't see through the spyglass, so the point still stands. In this adaptation, it doesn't make sense to have parts of Neverland only visible to those who believe in it. Wouldn't it mean that she should see less magic as time goes on, as she realizes she doesn't want to be in Neverland instead of more? Throughout the whole movie, she can't understand Tinkerbell, but she does in the last scene. Why? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Why is she hearing a magical creature that doesn't exist all of a sudden? I guess the writers just wanted to do something cool and didn't put much thought into it, like with everything else in the movie. I'll say it again, there have been so many adaptations that they're free to do anything as long as it's good, but they removed so much of the story that it could never be. Their approach with a more realistic and cynical take on the story falls flat because it's Disney and they won't make more mature movies. They laid the foundation for a darker story with a psychopathic Peter Pan, but midway they realized it was a Disney movie, so instead of embracing the idea with an R-rated movie where the boy starts slaughtering people, they shifted to a cute story and a cute ending, resulting in an empty story that's neither enchanting nor horrifying. I'm pretty sure this movie would be boring to children because it's not fun, colorful, silly, charming, or entertaining. As a grown-up, I can attest that it's a nightmare to watch. Thank God it's not in theaters, so parents can let their kids watch the movie alone in the living room. And thank God it's not in theaters, so kids can turn the TV off.